All right, Chelsea fans, welcome back to another episode. That's right, of the London is Blue podcast. Hopefully, your favorite Chelsea podcast out there and a part of the Men in Blazers Media Network. Dan, along with Nick and Jess, and we're going to be getting into Chelsea's 2-2 draw against Brentford. That's right, there was some sting in this one. And unfortunately, we were not doing it. It was a little bit of late drama in the match that saw Chelsea not take maximum points against another London rival this past weekend. We've got a couple things I want to talk about, including just Chelsea's challenges coming out of international breaks, which unfortunately there are a ton of them this season as it relates to the build up to the World Cup. So not even the fact that there are international breaks, but the challenge that they feel a little more important to some of these players right now for getting locked into their lineups. I think there's also some operational challenges on the pitch as relates to João Pedro as a sole striker, some of the Gittins conversation. Obviously, we did benefit from having Cole Palmer back, so we'll talk about a couple of those things. And then, look, we'll talk a little bit about the VAR decision related to the offside as well, but that just did we do enough to win outside of that? I think is another question to maybe get into. But Nick, as we always do, we love to throw a couple 3-word match reviews out there to get people understanding how we feel about it. We had a couple from our Discord community. We had Millhouse with underestimated bee sting. You had Doc Water with the international window hangover. And then you had Craig with the points thrown away. So I think there was a general vibe that felt like it was what came out of this for most Chelsea supporters. Do you have one that sets a similar tone, or did you go a little different here?
I think it's in the same vein, but depth takes time. I don't think Chelsea are as deep as what the depth chart might show in terms of talent and strength across multiple positions, and that will present challenges as we head into a busy fall period. So I think it's going to take a lot of time for all these pieces to work together effectively. But unfortunately, the Champions League does not offer you the luxury of time like the Conference League did to get all that together.
Is the stinger done? The people are going to be asking after the pod, is the stinger for the Champions League matches done?
Don't you fucking worry about it, because we got it handled, baby.
Okay. All right. Jess, what did you have for a 3-word match review?
I went quite simple, just play silly games. I think we kind of dropped the ball a little bit in the first half, so we try to recoup some of that during the second half. And I mean, it is what it is, but I think Maresca made a few mistakes. I think our players made a few mistakes. And as Nick pointed out, you can even point to our transfer window to say play silly games. But I think we're going to address a lot of that during this episode. So.
Look, I went with allergic to breaks, which takes us right into the top of the conversation here, because the international break roulette, boy, oh boy, it punched us pretty hard in the face here for this one. I mean, just when you look at the lineup and think about the fact that you had gotten the Athletic article from Simon Johnson the day prior about Buonanotte scoring behind the scenes in a little bit of a closed friendly situation. There was some good positive vibes getting out there into the atmosphere, and boy, oh boy, drops right into the starting lineup for this one here, along with João Pedro, Pedro Neto, Jamie Gittins in your attack. Yeah, Enzo Fernandez and Moises Caicedo. It's like the midfield that you would hope to have, or at least two of the individuals. And then a back line that I don't think any of us maybe predicted as being the back line that would feature in this game, with Hato, Trev Chalobah, Tosin, and West Fofana as your backline there, with Rob Sanchez between the sticks. How shocked were you maybe at the lineup drop, Nick? I think when we were in the WhatsApp group chat, the Buonanotte thing was probably the most shocking of any of the elements here, outside of maybe seeing West Fofana finally back, but in a right back role.
Yeah, I mean, I think it speaks to just the lineup and the way that Maresca tried to strategically gamble, and the players that were not on the substitutes bench just as much as the players that were on the substitutes bench, obviously missing a few there. It really did surprise me, because Buonanotte is on a straight loan, playing over guys that are getting paid to be Chelsea players, and never in my wildest dreams did I think we'd see him in a starting role right after the international break. I think it caught me flat-footed, candidly. Not as surprised to see Neto and Joao Pedro and Jamie Gittins, obviously, but that one was definitely a massive surprise, along with Wes starting, which was a massive surprise to me because I think just I know he has to get minutes into his legs and obviously get back up to kind of match fitness, but that was straight after the international break, a little bit of a shock. I would have bet the entire house that Garnacho would have started a game before Buonanotte. I would have, and I think that was kind of shocking. So it was a gamble for sure. Obviously, losing to Lap right before the international break has caused a reshuffle in the way that we were thinking about the number 10 position, with Joao Pedro performing pretty well there before the break, and now the game is on to try and figure out what to do with that if Cole Palmer is not fully fit.
And I think, Jess, as we kind of get into it too, I mean, you had a bench that had the players that you might have expected to feature in the starting 11. I mean, Marco Correa was there, Reece James was there, Cole Palmer was there, but I think, to Nick's point, still getting just a little bit back to 100% fitness. I mean, getting to see him in training ground photos and then seeing him on the bench, like all of that is like positive direction news heading into this part of the season. How'd you feel maybe just about like the decisions that Maresca made with that starting 11? And do we feel like maybe he did the best with a bad situation, given some of the challenges? I mean, no Delap, Nico was going to be here, but then left. Joao Pedro not 100% according to Maresca as well too. Like it felt like he did have a bad hand, but would you made one or two different decisions?
Yeah, I would have probably made at least two. I understand trying to preserve Cucurella and Reece James, especially Reece James with the fitness. And, if you're looking ahead and you have, Bayern Munich and you want your best players available. So I think it was fair of him to try out Hato. I don't understand Wesley Fofana starting. I really don't. I love him as a player. I think he's really talented. But to me, it looked like he is not really fit. He couldn't really run. And so to start him at right back when you have Josh and you have Gusto on the bench, it was a little weird. It made me think that maybe he wants to start Gusto against Bayern Munich and have, and Reece wasn't ready to start this match because of the internationals. So I was a little bit confused, but at the same time, you do have Josh there. So that one was one that I completely do not understand. I think we would benefited a lot more having either Josh or Gusto there on that hand side. I don't get it. And as for Buonanotte, I think it was more of, I think he wouldn't have started if Stevan was available. Maybe he panicked a little bit. I mean, not panicked, but he didn't feel like he could trust Ty or Gu to start and have JP on that 10. But it still felt kind of weird because, as Nick said, you didn't really have him for long. He didn't really play with everybody else. So I don't think, at least for his position, you could argue, okay, there wasn't an obvious option, because we were talking about this during the game. The most obvious option would be play Andre and then have Enzo a little bit higher up. But then you can say, okay, maybe Andre wasn't ready because he played for Brazil altitude, which was also probably the reason that João Pedro didn't really feel fit and Stevan wasn't there. So for that position, I can at least find some sort of justification for the way that Maresca was thinking, even though I don't agree with. But the right back for me, it was just very, very. I don't understand the reasoning behind that decision at all.
Yeah, it felt a little cute to me in terms of like trying to game the right backs to be, I think the preferred setup for Bayern. And I think a lesson that was learned here, Dan, as we look at the lineup and how the lineup performed and the gaps that there were for Brentford to counterattack into, which was basically it's been their entire strategy for as long as we can remember, is this long counterattacking, quick counterattacking move. Is that Tosin really struggles in those one-on-one situations where he has to cover large distances. And I think he was poor on the day. I think he was poor in a couple of big moments. I think he was kind of poor on set pieces. And so the combination of Wes not having like the pure athleticism that we know a healthy West has, and Tosin certainly being much more comfortable in a controlled environment rather than on these long breaks, obviously gave Chelsea huge issues. And that combo probably shouldn't start together again for some time until West is like fully back to West and can cover the ground to help.
Yeah, I mean, just for a point of context, I mean, his last Premier League game before this was Chelsea's 1-0 loss to Arsenal in March of last season, so March 16th of 2025. So it has been a minute or two for West Fofana. I think it is a very interesting kind of time to pull him in. You would almost think, looking just a little bit ahead, I mean, Chelsea have that Lincoln City match as a part of the League Cup. It feels like that might have been more of the type of game or fixture to bring him back in for, or some type of 20-minute cameo if things are going good in the game to just get him a bit of a run out before Chelsea just drop him into a starting lineup. But I think to some of the points you all made, it did feel as if there were some challenges here to kind of getting it done. I do think it is a rock and a hard place, though, for me, Nick, for Maresca. Like, I mean, you want him to make some of these decisions, but you also don't want to burn out these players so early into the season. And like, protecting Cole, 100%. I mean, Cole is the ceiling for the team. Like, he sets the floor and he sets the ceiling. So I don't think you can risk him, but maybe you could have pushed on one of the other players to be available and to make a switch here.
Yeah, I agree. It is definitely a rock and a hard place, and it's a strategic gamble in whatever direction that you decide to do it. Because at some point, Drell, Hato, Buonanotte, Gittins, anyone who kind of classified in this team as like depth, right? As like pure, reserve, and like is someone who can make the difference coming off the bench. Whether you start with all the starters and bring those guys in for extended cameos in the second half, or you do the reverse, which is what Maresca ends up doing, it can backfire in a number of directions or benefit you in a number of directions. I mean, there's nothing provable out there to say that if he would have done the second half in the first half and the first half in the second half, that we would have won the game, right? Because we made errors in both halves that led to goals. And so I do understand the frustration. I myself was a bit frustrated with the way that the lineup was rolled out. And then I had to think about it. And at the same point that I was frustrated, you can't risk Cole Palmer. You can't risk Reece James. You can't really risk West Fofana at this point for longer than the 45 minutes that he was given. Mark Cucurella, we've been dying for someone to come in and spell him, so that he doesn't have to play every single match. Like, you're going to have to trust these guys. I just think it's going to take much more time, Jess, than I originally anticipated for this team to feel like there isn't a drop off from the starters to the reserves. And, I don't think there's any other way for Chelsea to get through the start of this season without there being some growing pains.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with it, but I think I'm a little bit more positive than you are, because there were some absence that I think we won't have in the future. For instance, Andre, for me, even though he was on the bench, I'd like to think that it was clear that he wasn't fit, and I do not think that he was fit. Because of the altitude, people don't understand how that really it's impactful. But being Brazilian and watching us play there, I mean, we know like they have the oxygen and they feel sick and all of that. So, you will have Andre, you will have Stevan, you will have Garnacho back to full fitness. So I think we look stronger in terms of depth when compared to last season. I really do believe that, but I also agree that it will take time, and that's a particular point with the way that Bluco and the sporting directors have approached the window. Because when you make so much changes, so many changes, particularly when you're talking about our attacking players, they're going to need time to gel and to understand what they're meant to do, and the positions that they want to occupy on the field and how to play with each other and what Maresca wants. So, I mean, obviously, the Chelsea fan base is very critical, and I'm including myself in that aspect and mode. And we can be very critical of wingers, and we need scorers and you need assists. So it's all fair to say, okay, we need to sell and buy somebody better. But the way that we approach is we sell and we still buy potential players. So when you buy young players with potential, you need to let them develop. And that is frustrating. That can be frustrating. And maybe it's not the ideal way of, or the way that we were used to, growing up watching Chelsea or a few years back, but it is what we have right now. So if that's the approach, then we have to be patient. We have to be patient and to let players develop, or to at least try to be a little bit more lenient. I don't know if you guys agree with me or not. Dan, it's just I see your face, so I don't know if you're agreeing with what I'm saying, but it's, I mean, it's a struggle for me personally, because I'm like, I want to be very harsh on the players, but at the same time, I understand where they're coming from, and it's just weird for me. I have like a duality, I think, almost.
I thought I was being positive. I don't know.
You are. We're being as positive as we can off a 2-2 draw, which still nets Chelsea 1 point in the G Tech, which hopefully will never play in ever again as they get hopefully relegated this season. Look, we're gonna get an ad break out of the way, but when we get back, we will talk about some of the conversations around, I think, just patience with some of the younger players. Particularly, I think Jamie Gittins got a lot of attention in the post match conversation about what he did or didn't do in this one. So we'll talk about him and a couple others, but stay tuned, bear back. All right. Well, if you look at average positions, so where the average players were on the pitch in any given time, the most forward player for the entirety of the match, Jamie Gittins, was your guy. He was the most further forward player in this game, which was very interesting, I think, considering that, I mean, he had 17 touches across his 56 minutes, which felt more like, I actually kind of felt like it was more than I thought it was going to be, considering what I didn't think he was doing at times. And, we have had this situation now, Jess, where I think the left side of our attack has been just a little bit more of a question mark. And we had obviously Mudryk come in, we had Jadon Sancho last season. We've not really landed a strong replacement on that left wing, and Jamie Gittins is now our next attempt at that. And obviously we talk about Garnacho in a little bit. What did you make of his performance in particular? He had very high kind of pass accuracy, 11 out of 13, and we did have a key pass in there, but maybe the ground duels, maybe just some of the comfort with the ball at his feet. It did feel like we're in for maybe more acclimatization than we thought we might have necessarily, or like, did you feel like this was what you were expecting from him heading into this season?
He is an interesting one for me, because I don't really follow Bundesliga that closely. So when we were linked with him, I did a lot of research and I talked to people that watched him, and I try to watch bit in pieces. But when you don't follow a player throughout the whole game and you don't really, you haven't been able to watch him that closely, I really didn't have a solid opinion. I knew he was talented, but from what I saw, he looked very raw. And in my mind, he looked very much like Noni Madueke when we first got him. So it's almost like Noni Madueke a couple of years back. So I wasn't really expecting much in terms of output or anything. I just was expecting him to be fast and hit the byline, and that was about it, really, to be quite honest with you. I don't know if he's feeling the pressure a little bit more than anticipated. And I think we tend to compare, because we've been talking about Stevan for a long while, and how it would take so long for him to acclimatize because of the huge change, and the fact that, okay, maybe he is not his best yet, but he has been performing to a level that I don't think people generally expecting him to, in terms of how quick it was for him to adapt, let's say, to the league and to this different culture. So I think there's a little bit of comparison going on here, which I don't think is necessarily fair, because every player has their own struggles, and I don't like putting like players against each other, but I think that's what's happening in the mind of a lot of Chelsea fans right now, is the fact that Stevan has, let's say, quote unquote, hit the ground running, kind of makes us as a collective have a little less patience with Gittins, I think. But it's good to remember, I think, that he is a very young player, that he is talented, and we need to give him the environment to prosper. That's about it, and I do think he will develop. I do think that there's talent there. I think he's very fast. He can dribble, goes one-on-one. And I go back to Noni Madueke. I think that's the closest comparison. So I do think that he will get there. But maybe it will be a little bit slower than we anticipated. I right now 100% believe that Garnacho will be ahead of him in the pecking order. I think Garnacho will impact our games a lot more than him. And perhaps right now, that will be the best option for him to maybe, as you mentioned, Lincoln, to have that and just gain his confidence and understanding things a little bit more. What I will say is that looking to the reaction online, I don't know if you guys agree with me, but there was so much negativity towards him that I don't think it's good for him in terms of his development. So right now, I think the best for him and for what he can do for Chelsea is to maybe Maresca protect him a little bit, if that makes sense, and just try to don't play him in the big games as of right now. I think Lincoln would be a very, very good opportunity to try to play him again and to see what he can do there. But I wouldn't start him in the next match. I wouldn't look to giving him a lot of minutes come against Bayern or anything like that. So I don't know if you agree with me, Nick, or not.
Yeah, I think one, the Bundesliga tax, we know in terms of how long it takes a player to acclimatize to life in the Premier League. The Premier League is a much more physical, less space to do what you want, less space to exploit in behind, quicker defenders all over the board, better goalkeepers. Like, I mean, we know what this looks like. We've had plenty of players come over from the Bundesliga. I think the difference that I hoped for with Gittins initially, Dan, was he had obviously grown up through City's Academy. I think understood the way that Maresca wanted to play. And I kind of look at him in the same. I think Madueke is a wonderful comparison, and kind of Pedro Neto too. They both kind of have one trick in their bag in terms of like what they really want to go do. But the reason why I think Pedro Neto is still here and Madueke maybe isn't in the same way is because Pedro Neto decided that he was going to go all in on team football last year and get himself into defensive actions and winning the ball back and contributing as a striker. And I think that's obviously not a fair comparison for someone who's only like 2 or 3 games into their Chelsea career and Gittins in the same way. But like, if I were Gittins, I would look at the kind of couple ways that this could go, which is you're either the biggest star and you have the most talent and you're basically undroppable because you're contributing so much, or really pick up some of the team game that Maresca is trying to play, because this is, I think, one of the areas, especially starting him and Hato on the same side, like was a difficult thing for both of them. They don't know their own, the movements and the way that they want to, kind of go forward with the ball or even track back. And so I'm giving him the whole season here. Like, I do not believe that we're going to see, and this is not me like being negative about the guy. I really don't believe we're going to see like a huge first season out of him necessarily in terms of like contribution. Maybe he'll prove me wrong, but I do want to see progress in his game and the way that he gels with the team.
So, talking about gelling with the team, there's only one striker for Chelsea Football Club right now. That's Joao Pedro. And I mean, he continues to gel with the team in whatever shape or form that is required of him, whether or not is in a best position or slightly less possession, whether it's assisting, whether it's scoring goals. He continues to get it done. Wonderful assist for him in this game, which was quite special. Played 79 minutes in this one. Of his touches, he had 45 in total. He had one long ball, two created, one big chance created as well. I mean, it feels like, to me, Nick, right now, as much as like Cole Palmer is like a bounce the season on him, like Joao Pedro has now also joined the ranks of like the Chelsea season and Joao Pedro's health are diametrically linked at this exact point in time. Like, if something were to go wrong, like Chelsea could crater based upon where we are right now because of how good he has been coming in. Like, he had a sofa score of 6-2, which I actually thought was a little harsh considering that like the way Brentford were playing, the way that they were backing in, they do play a very, very tight 2 in their kind of core center backs that did not give him a lot of like great opportunity, but he still found a way to get involved. And again, not his best output, but like he's still contributing at a really, really high level.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more on just like where this season goes if he is healthy and firing, or if he's not healthy and not firing, or any combination of those words together. I mean, he's going to be the guy now. I mean, we were talking, to Matt before. Obviously, the game went, and I think just the number of scans that they're doing on Delap, and what we know as Chelsea fans about hamstring injuries from the last couple of years. I mean, I think we're talking about a pretty lengthy injury and a pretty decent chunk of time before Delap is back at like full fitness, ready to rock and roll. I mean, maybe some cameos in there, but like really ready to lead the line and like do the hard runs and behind, and the physicality, I think is going to be a minute. And so I think in this game, Jess, you saw, Joao Pedro in my mind struggle a little bit to figure out where the spaces were and understand where, admittedly a new cast of characters up front were going to be, and, how everything went. And then I think once Cole gets in and they figure out, a little bit more of the balance and all this sort of stuff, Garnacho comes in, Ty goes up top. He's finding a few more areas. You start to see him get back to what we saw in the first 3 games of the season, which is a really excellent forward. And this is going to take a minute, I think, because this was the first game in this new reality where he is now the line leader. And, outside of the Club World Cup, that really hasn't had to be the case this season so far. But my hope is that he is able to be flexible, because we're going to need him to play in a lot of different ways this season. And the Champions League is going to offer a whole new level of competition for him to kind of show how good he is.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think I've read this narrative already going on online that João Pedro, because of this game, that João Pedro isn't a 9. He is a 10, and he isn't a 9. And I don't agree with that. I think he is, as we say, a 9.5, meaning that he can play on the 10, he can play on a 9. I think he is a striker. He can play at striker, but there are different type of strikers. So if you're looking towards that player, that striker is going to have his back towards the goal and just hold two center backs. He is not that guy. He's not going to be that guy. But that's not to say that he isn't a striker. He has proved, in my opinion, that he can play very well in the number 9 position, both for Chelsea, for Brazil. I've been watching him for a long time now, for Watford, Fluminense, and Brighton. I think he has shown that he is very versatile, but not as in this throwaway word that he doesn't have a place. I think he can really, really thrive also in that 9 position. But I think Maresca mentioned, there was a quote about him that for those types of games, you needed ideally that striker that's going to hold the center backs back, and that would allow João Pedro to have a little bit more freedom. Obviously, I mean, I agree with that, because that's not the type of striker he is, but that's not to say that he isn't a striker. I also agree with your point on Cole Palmer 100%. I think they understand each other very well. People don't like to talk about Nico a lot, but that was also a relationship that was growing with Cole and Nico. And I think with João and Cole Palmer, they kind of have that understanding where they know where each other are going to be. And I think that helps João Pedro as a striker when you don't have to lap, because we've all seen Cole play as a false 9, and Cole, making those late runs into the box. And if there's one thing about João Pedro's game that I think he needs to improve on, is his movement as a number 9 in terms of when he crashes the box. But I think it's night and day when you compared, even this particular game, this particular match, João Pedro without Cole Palmer and João Pedro with Cole Palmer. Before Cole Palmer, he was just dropping very, very deep because the ball wasn't really getting to him in the positions that he would like. But then with Cole, he kind of was able to roam closer to the box, and also, as we've seen, Cole was there as well, and so they kind of know when to run when they're with each other, which is very nice to see. So I mean, it sucks that we won't have Delap for a little bit, but I think the fact that Cole is back can be massive, not only because he is Cole Palmer and we know how important he is, but also because I think it directly impacts how João Pedro can have output for us. And that's a huge, huge positive. And as for injuries, I've always been very scared about João Pedro's fitness because he has a little bit of problems with his hamstring. If you follow Brighton, that's also something that's been very, very in the back of my mind, like very just that nagging voice. So just have to hope that he stays fit, that Maresca can somehow find a way to rotate him, even though he doesn't have a lot of options when it comes to his position right now, and that at least we can have when if he is to be injured, which we all don't hope that it will happen, but if it is, then we could hope that at least it's when Liam is back. So, but at this point, it's just looking at positives. Having Cole Palmer back with him, that's a huge, huge plus.
Yeah, I mean, just a context for individuals. So when he had that hamstring injury at Brighton, it was a 55 days out for that period of time in the 23-24 season, 24-25 season. It was actually a total of like 8 days, one injury, one game missed. And then you had to go like back to the season at Watford. He did have that ankle injury, which is another 57 days. So it's kind of been like individual injury with like a long standing period of time. So it's not like someone who has like a repeat on off situation. Like it's a larger one, not available for 1 to 2 months and then kind of back. So it seems like a general fitness opportunity. I do want to talk about Garnacho, but we're going to do that after our last ad break. So stay tuned to be right back. All right, Nick, it was that shock signing at the very end of the window, sitting across the boards at Stamford Bridge. Garnacho. He's here. He's ready. Gets an opportunity to come into this one and definitely looked up for it. I mean, that was like the guy looked happy to be here, which is, I think, sometimes just half the battle for getting people on your side, whether you like the signing or didn't like the signing. Only had 6 total touches in the time that he did get to spend on the pitch there. But I mean, kind of had the pre-pass to the goal. So good, bad, indifferent. How are you feeling about their Garnacho situation?
Fine. I mean,
no. I saw the WhatsApps. You were on it. You love it.
Was I? I don't think
I'm just
that was
creating
me.
a narrative for the listeners. Yeah. I'm really trying to sell you on it.
What if I've been a secret Garnacho fan this entire time? Just an absolute diabolical change.
You were running Fabrizio's account for the last 2 months. You were the one sending all the tweets.
Guys, we're super close here. It's not enough minutes to judge, and that's the boring answer to give here. And I don't want to create a narrative that isn't there. But I mean, his experience in the Premier League, his underlying numbers are just better than Gittins. I think he is a better fit in that left wing position as it stands today than Gittins. I think Garnacho's major competition is going to come from Pedro Neto on that side, and really kind of assuming that Stevao is running the right wing for the foreseeable future. And so if that's the case, then let's have a battle for it. Let's go for it. And all 3 of those guys should go for it. I mean, I really am not trying to write Jamie Gittins off at all, but I think he's going to have a little bit of a longer betting in period. It would not shock me to see Garnacho start the next Premier League match at left wing. I think Wednesday's probably a little too soon. And so I think you'll probably see a different combo there. But yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see him actually get some like full minutes and see where it goes.
I mean, Jess, did you have any thoughts on what was a very short cameo for him in this one, or thinking ahead to Bayern Munich and Manchester United? I mean, that would just be the biggest wrinkle of the start of the season if he scores a winning goal against Manchester United. The narrative, the expected narrative on that one would be quite delicious.
I think we deserve it. I think we deserve it. I was actually quite happy. I was actually quite happy. I mean, I do think that he's going to frustrate a couple of people in terms of, he's not a fantastic dribbler, so I think he's going to lose the ball a couple of times and he's going to frustrate fans. But he's very direct, and that's also a plus. He's cut back king, as we've seen, and I think we're going to score a couple of goals from him running towards that back post, which, I mean, again, Gittins didn't exactly do. Not trying to put Gittins down, just saying that I think, obviously, Garnacho, I think, is a little bit farther ahead in terms of his development, and also in the league, he's been playing for Manchester United, playing a lot of games for the Premier League. So I think it's fair. It's not putting Gittins down; it's just a reality. So I think he's going to actually contribute a lot in terms of how we score goals, and just if you're talking about GAs, I think he's going to be a good signing. So I was very happy. I've seen people pointing out that he lost his man during the goal and whatnot. I think just our defensive unit there, everybody made mistakes. So I wouldn't put that goal on him whatsoever. And I also think we wouldn't have scored our second goal were it not for him. So I think it was a more positive impact, and it is something, in my opinion, that gave me a little bit of optimism in terms of the depth that we were talking before. Because I mean, for this game, we didn't have him fit for 90 minutes and we didn't have Stevon. But looking ahead, hopefully Stevon was going to be back. Hopefully Garnacho will have 90 minutes and you have Pedro Neto. And then suddenly that gives you a couple of options to rotate and get results in the end. So I'm gonna say I'm very positive with his little cameo. I was happy.
I mean, I think to Nick, that point too that just made. I mean, ultimately, when you bring back a Estevao, you have Garnacho. If he can, replicate some of the stronger performances he had at United, like that does make the attack a little bit more well-rounded. Also, then gives you some of the flexibility of. And Sam and I talked about this in the preview pod, and then also in our Garnacho scouting pod. Like, do you potentially play him in a 9 position at some points? Do you potentially put Pedro Neto back out there as well, like to give some flexibility here? Like the moment you bring back one of these players, two of these players, even with Liam Delap being out till mid late November, it is going to supercharge like what this team is capable of doing from an attacking perspective.
As long as they know how to play together. I think that's the asterisk that you put at the end of that sentence, which is they need time on the training ground together, and they need match time together, and they need successful training ground time and successful match time together. There's just going to be a betting in period, and that's kind of what I'm going back to when I say that depth takes time, which is we made however many sales this summer, 20 some odd sales, and brought in, 7, 8, 9 new players. And, if Chelsea were to just run the same lineup year over year, you wouldn't have that issue because those players have now played a year together. But even for someone like Cole Palmer, who basically interchangeable with anybody, can work with anybody at any given time because he's so brilliant, he's going to need time to understand, where Garnacho wants the ball, which foot he wants it on, like where his run is really going to like start supercharging up and when it's going to be at its peak. And like all of that is just going to take a minute. I mean, hypothetically, it could be really good, but that is the work that Maresca gets paid the big bucks to figure out, which is how do I not only get these guys to understand each other and create a fluid attack, but which combinations are best together? How do we replace Cole in a 10 without a huge amount of drop off, or JP up top, or mix and match the options that we have together? It's the challenge of this entire season, I think, is to figure that out. And if we do, great things are going to happen because Chelsea do hypothetically have depth that other teams don't. If they don't, that's when we're going to see, some of the same stuff that we saw in the kind of terrible winter period that we went through last year.
So I do want to bring up as we kind of talk about things that sometimes go Chelsea's way, sometimes don't go Chelsea's way. You have Jody Morris, former assistant Chelsea first team men's team coach, tweeting about it after the fact when there were the first offside error by VAR in the 25-26 Premier League season, with the Brentford player just being in a little bit of an offside position, maybe making a move towards playing the ball in that scenario that potentially, maybe fully by letter of the law, should have been officiated as an offside situation. Chelsea don't get the call on the VAR official element. I mean, Nick, I don't even want to bemoan too much of it because like we have also like shaded on a couple of decisions, I think, this season
Sure.
that have gone our way. And I think it's a bit of a lottery. I think you wish the officials were better, and that is just going to be a continued theme from every football player, every football fan, every manager, every coach, every sporting director organization. Like, all of us want the officiating to be better. On this one, it feels like we got a little screwed, and it's not so great.
Yeah, and the minute that we got the call against Fulham, we knew this was going to happen, right? I mean, that's the way that it goes. There was no huge surprise here. I don't know, like, I don't even think it's the most egregious of the ways that we've been screwed in the past. We've been, on the end of some real doozies, and I don't even think this one is like the very, very worst that we've seen. What shocked me a little bit is the commentary around it when they saw the replay, and just what offsides means, and especially around the goal mouth. And, the fact that, yeah, Ouattara doesn't get his foot on the end of the ball, but he certainly interferes with the play by going for it and changing where the defenders are positioned and what they're reacting to. That's what I don't understand about the VAR call, and that's what I didn't understand about the commentary going, well, he might have been in an offside position, but he didn't touch the ball. He doesn't have to touch the ball. He just has to interfere with play. I mean, we've seen this call a bunch, and I didn't understand I guess people are just tired of Chelsea getting 2 calls at the start of the season, and decided that, hey, as long as Chelsea don't get this call, then we're going to just commentate this differently. But it's very, very bad commentary, and it's very, very bad officiating. And again, getting to the next point, I don't know if it really impacted what was a relatively fair result for how average of a performance this was from us. But I didn't understand. Like, there are a lot of really smart people online going, he interferes with play. It's not just that he's standing outside. He interferes with play, and thus the goal should be chalked off. And that's it.
Just the one thing that Nick touched on a little bit here on just the balance of it, and we were talking about before we started recording, is like, did Chelsea do enough to win or take this result independent of the bad luck type of VAR situations? And I think you look at what Liverpool has done across a couple series of games this season, where, I mean, they're just scoring plenty of goals after the 83rd minute to lock up a win and to be flawless to start the season. And you kind of look at it as like, wow, I wish we could do that sometimes and just be very, very comfortable, like being a team that is capable of making things happen right at the end of it and locking it up. Do you feel like Chelsea did enough in this game to win it on the bounce without having to rely upon this, knowing that we are all still maybe a little miffed that the officiating continues to take away from what should be, I think, better regulated type of games in terms of officiating?
I think looking solely at the way that we perform, given our first half, which in my opinion was absolutely atrocious, I would say a draw is a fair result. However, to your point about Liverpool getting the result when they don't necessarily deserve it and just pushing through, this would be it. This would be it with our second go, were it not for the referee nonsense. So in that sense, for me, is a little bit annoying. If it's just the result itself, it's just okay, fair enough. We didn't play as well as we could have, as we should have, in my opinion. Mistakes were made. I absolutely think that we gambled a little bit too far, and we shouldn't need the referees. I don't want to, I'm not going to be, screaming that it's the fault of the referees and this, all of that, and the nonsense we see. I'm not going to be doing that. However, I'm still annoyed by it, because were it not for it, we would be able to get the 3 points without necessarily deserving it based on how we played. And sometimes that's what we need. That's what you need as a club to push through to get those results. And it was everything around the goal, the offside and the throw in. If it, like, I don't remember who threw the ball, but they walked like 10 yards, and it was closer to the halfway line than there was
Shada, yeah.
than it was to the goal, and it was just everything about that goal that made you like, oh no, we almost got away with it. I think that's the feeling, like we almost got away with a bad performance, but it is what it is. As I said, just looking at the result and how we played, we need to do better. I think we will do better because of the circumstances that we talk about of players coming back in and all of that, and the international break that never favors us in terms of how we perform. So I think I think there are more reasons to be positive than negative at this stage, even though we have 8 points and people say, oh, you should have at least 10 or whatever. And maybe that's fair. But we were talking before to last season. And if you take the exact same matches last season, there has been an improvement in terms of point gains. So I still think there are reasons to be positive, and Champions League is back. So I'm just, I think we should be focusing on that and just be happy to watch and to hear that song again with Chelsea Blue. So I'm gonna be disagreeing with Nick here. I mean, we all know how me and Dan think and feel about the Champions League, and I think we can do it. So I'm going to be focusing on that.
Oh, all right. Well, I love it. I mean, look, I think we have our eyes locked in on this mid part of the week and Chelsea playing Bayern Munich. An opportunity to let Nico Jackson know that he made the wrong decision, as that is absolutely what I hope is very much on the cards here. If you make one change to the lineup, or two changes to the lineup, Nick, from the weekend to the Bayern Munich game, what are you doing?
Yeah, simply put, I mean, I don't think Cole is ready to start, probably. I think the fact that you have to bring him on for as long as you do in this game to make an impact is like kind of troubling. So I would not rush Cole back. I would bring Andre in. I would push Enzo to the 10 so that Caicedo is not defending Bayern Munich's midfield by himself, which has kind of been the case over the last month. And then I'm changing up the wings, and I'm bringing Malo Gusto in and shifting, Cucurella back in. So getting back to what we saw at the end of the first international break with Gusto, Trev Tosin, and Cucurella. I think that's probably the best case scenario there, and just hope that Stevao's back and that Neto might be able to take the left wing for this one and provide some balance. So I think you're going to see some decent changes here, and I think the midfield, because Asugo got hurt in an international break, and talked to Matt about that, and the fact that of course Lavi is not back fit, it will mean that Andre is going to get rotated in one way or another. Right? There's no way around it. So very interested to see how and where he plays, if he is the number 10 or if they move Enzo up.
And then, Jess, any different changes you're making to what Nick suggested, or are we kind of all maybe on the same page with what he is suggesting?
Yeah, I think we're pretty much on the same page. For me, a lot depends on how fit Cole Palmer is and how fit Reece James is, because I'm still of the opinion that if Reece James is fit, you play Reece James. I agree. I don't think he will be ready to play 90 minutes, or I can't see him starting the game. But if he were to, if Maresca felt he was fit, I would start him against Bayern 100%. Again, I don't think that would happen, but that's about the only difference.
Well, look, it is going to come on a very, very quick turn. So we do have a couple podcasts coming out later this week for you that do include a Bayern Munich match preview with my good friend Sam, CFC Central. You know him. And then we'll have a match review later in the week before we get to that Manchester United match preview. So tons of pod content coming your way this week. Don't forget to get locked in, subscribe to the free weekly newsletter, the London's Blue Dispatch, get involved in our Discord community in either a free or paid capacity. Leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. It's always appreciated. And if you like us on YouTube, or if you just want to maybe throw us a little bit of a like, sub, hit the bell icon to get notified on YouTube, leave us a little comment saying what you enjoyed about this episode. That makes our hearts warm too. And we really, really appreciate it. But that's going to do it for this episode. So thank you so much for listening. Hopefully we'll be back with a match review that is about a Chelsea win later this week. But until next time, Chelsea fans, you know what to do. Keep the blue flag flying high.